Well, friends, Donald Trump's trial dance card is packed. How is he going to fit in all of those criminal trials? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, we all know Donald Trump has more trial dates set than most other career criminals. So let's talk about what happens when trial dates collide. I just wrote a piece for MSNBC titled, "A Trial Delay Wouldn't Be the Win Trump Thinks It Is." And now, friends, stick with me here as we try to follow the bouncing trials. Facing the prospect of 5 civil and criminal trials over the course of 7 months, former President Donald Trump's trial dance card is quite full. It's not at all unusual for criminal defendants to have multiple cases pending against them simultaneously in multiple jurisdictions. This can happen when people choose a life of crime, as has Donald Trump. I mean, remember, friends, Donald Trump is indicted for things he did before he was president, things he did while he was president, and things he did after he left the presidency. Feels kind of career criminal-ish, no? However, there are only so many days in a week and months in a year, so what happens when trial dates collide? And then, friends, I go on to try to summarize Donald Trump's trial schedule. On January 16, 2024, E. Jean Carroll's second defamation trial against Trump begins. In March, 2 of his criminal trials commence. His federal trial for 2020 election interference begins in Washington on March 4, and the New York State trial for falsifying business records begins March 25th. 2 months later, the other federal criminal trial for mishandling classified documents begins in Florida. Finally, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis has requested August 5th, 2024, as the proposed trial date in Trump's Georgia State RICO case. So now, as we begin to walk our way through Donald Trump's many trial dates, let's start with the most obvious conflict. If Trump's D.C. trial begins on March 4th, that trial will still be in progress when his New York trial is scheduled to begin later in March. Now, unlike civil trials, defendants ordinarily must be present for every session of their criminal trial. And obviously, Donald Trump can't be in 2 courtrooms at once. While he's being prosecuted in D.C., he can't be in New York sitting in his criminal trial. Under those circumstances, the latter trial, the New York trial, would have to be rescheduled to a later date. But here's the thing, friends. The judges, Judge Chutkan in D.C. and Judge Merchan up in New York, already have a plan in place to take care of that conflict. There are indications that the judges in these 2 cases anticipated this conflict. At a court hearing in the federal case, Judge Tanya Chutkan stated on the record that she had spoken with Judge Juan Merchan, the judge presiding over the New York case, and informed him of her intent to set a March 4 trial date. Although Judge Chutkan said nothing about the substance of their conversation, it seems the judges agreed that the federal trial in D.C. will take precedence over the New York State trial. So that trial conflict pretty easily resolved. The New York trial just gets continued to a later date. But other potential trial conflicts are a little bit murkier. So for example, Donald Trump's D.C. trial for trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election will begin on March 4. What happens if that trial sort of bumps into the May trial that is currently scheduled down in Florida? That's the one that Judge Cannon set to begin May 20th. That's Trump's Classified Documents Obstruction of Justice Espionage Act prosecution. What happens if the D.C. case bumps into the May case down in Florida? Well, here's how I take on that potential conflict. In my 3 decades as a federal prosecutor, I have seen that judges are understandably loath to force a defense team into back-to-back trials. Judges understand that defense attorneys are constitutionally obligated to represent their clients effectively and zealously. To meet that obligation, attorneys need adequate time to prepare for trial, particularly in the weeks and even months before a scheduled trial date. Finishing one lengthy trial in Washington, only to turn right around and begin a second lengthy trial in Florida, would hamstring Trump's defense team. But you know what, friends? I actually think those 2 trials, the March trial in D.C. and the May trial in Florida, are unlikely to collide. Here's why. Earlier this month, Judge Aileen Cannon extended several filing and hearing deadlines in Trump's Florida case. The likely result will be that that trial will not start on May 20th. Judge Cannon seemed to anticipate, if only tacitly, that eventuality by directing the parties, Special Counsel Jack Smith's prosecutors and Trump's defense attorneys, to attend a scheduling conference hearing on March 1st, just 3 days before the scheduled commencement of Trump's D.C. trial. Assuming the latter trial, that is the D.C. trial, is on track to begin on March 4, Judge Cannon will almost certainly vacate the May 20 trial date and set the Florida trial well off into the future, perhaps even after the 2024 election. Now, friends, here's the kicker. Donald Trump may consider that a win if he and his lawyers can manage to get the May 20th Florida classified documents trial kicked down the road, maybe even until after the November 2024 presidential election. Trump may view that as a win, but I don't think I agree. And here's why. Delaying his Florida trial until after the election is precisely what Trump and his attorneys have been angling for all along. At a recent hearing, Trump attorney John Lauro told Judge Chutkan that the obvious and only way Trump can receive a fair trial in the D.C. case is if the trial is pushed until after November 2024. But here's what Judge Chutkan said to that. Quote, "This trial will not yield to the election cycle," Judge Chutkan replied, "and we will not revisit the March 4 trial date in the D.C. case." And now, friends, to complete the picture, we have to go back to the Georgia State RICO trial. But while Trump might welcome the delay in the classified documents trial down in Florida, that may have some unanticipated consequences for him. Assuming the D.C. trial wraps up in late April or early May of 2024, that would give Trump and his attorneys ample time to prepare for the Georgia trial set to begin in August. So Trump's victory in getting the Florida case postponed may be a hollow one, as a postponed Florida trial will do little more than free him up for his Georgia trial. Now, friends, I'll be the first to admit it is not easy to follow the bouncing Trump trials. But here's how I conclude my piece for MSNBC. Much can still change with each case's timeline in the coming weeks and months. trying to figure out which of these trials will commence on a previously set trial date and which will be delayed to some future date is a bit like a game of musical chairs, with the parties not quite knowing when the music might stop. But one way or another, Donald Trump inevitably will have to face the music. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.